Hello everyone and welcome back. I am as always Inquisitor Aura and this is How to Roleplay in World of Warcraft. And this week we're going to be taking a look at the Highborne, the race class combination that includes Night Elf and Mages. Please note that these are just the generally accepted guidelines to socially acceptable and lore-friendly roleplay in World of Warcraft. There is a niche for every type and style of roleplay out there, and what I am telling you here are the generally accepted guidelines that will not get you ridiculed, laughed at, picked on, ignored, or shunned. The Highborne were the upper classes of Kaldare civilization and the favored of Queen Azshara during her reign. At first, a nameless caste made up of night elves who had a high aptitude and proficiency with the arcane. They found favor with the golden-eyed queen, the Light of Lights, and enjoyed the privileged status her favor granted them. In their hubris, however, they brought the Burning Legion to Azeroth. Queen Azshara, certain she was to become queen of all that existed, allied herself with Sargeras. The resulting War of the Ancients nearly destroyed Azeroth and saw Azshara cast to the depths of the sea with her closest advisors and handmaidens. The remaining Highborne have fought against the Legion, suffered years of scrutiny and prejudice until they were forced to flee Kalimdor. These Highborne soon became known as the Kaldare, established the flourishing magical kingdom of eldre'thalas. And yet, there were still Highborne who, segregated in small communities beyond the reach of the majority of Night Elven society, managed to keep to their old ways. The shen'dralar, an ancient sect of arcanists once highly favored by Queen Azshara, had managed to survive the Sundering and managed to remain hidden throughout much of history, but whole, having trapped a powerful demon behind a magic-draining shield and using him as a battery in the place of the Well of Eternity. Deep within the halls of eldre'thalas, known as Dire Maul to the rest of the world, the shen'dralar sat and studied and waited until their expertise with the arcane was needed again. In this video, we are working off the assumption that most current Highborne came from eldre'thalas. Now, the first really important thing that we need to address in this video is that not all Night Elf mages are Highborne. The only Night Elf mages that can claim Highborne status are the ones from these hidden pocket cities such as the shen'dralar. These Night Elves, these Highborne, remember the War of the Ancients and the Sundering. That means yes, they are ancient. Most of them are well over 10,000 years old. Any Night Elf mages who became mages recently are not Highborne. They are likely being taught or have been taught by the Highborne, but cannot and likely would not count themselves amongst them. Remember that the Highborne and their queen are directly responsible for the War of the Ancients. This isn't conjecture, this is a fact. Any modern Night Elf mages, while they recognize the need for arcanists amongst the Kaldare, would not willingly adopt the title of Highborne for any reason. Keeping this in mind, many Highborne understand their role in the near destruction of Azeroth, and they keep the title of Highborne in order to redefine it. The great shame of the Kaldare is the Highborne, and those that still call themselves that seek to undo the negative association and burden they bear by working hard to prevent the Legion's assault. Now, as I said before, most Highborne are indeed ancient. There are many amongst them that recall vividly the War of the Ancients and the Sundering of Azeroth, though over the years they would have borne children who, while they possess knowledge of these events, do not actually remember them. In either case, most Highborne are quite old, and with long lifespans comes a unique view of the world and patterns of behavior the shorter-lived races don't possess and often don't understand. The Highborne understand patience, and it can seem that their patience is nearly endless. When you can live over 10,000 years, learning to wait is a valuable skill. This means that the Highborne are willing to wait a very long time for a project or a plan to come to fruition. They are not creatures of impatience and instant gratification. And most Highborne are as proficient with magic and the arcane as the Blood Elves are, which of course makes sense, considering the shen'dralar are the mutated descendants of the fleeing Night Elven Highborne. All of that being said, the Highborne still resemble the Night Elves. And while there could be any number of reasons for this, the most likely one is that most modern Highborne came from isolated sanctuaries in Kalimdor, and thus had a close proximity to Nordrassil, the World Tree. There is established in the lore the reason for the mutation of the High and the Blood Elves, and it is their distance from the World Tree. When the Dragonflights grew Nordrassil over Illidan's attempt to reproduce the Well of Eternity on Mount Hyjal, they bound the Night Elves, all of them, to it, so they would know when the tree was in danger and be able to respond. The farther the exiled Highborne went, the less influence the World Tree had on them. Many grew sick, many died. They shrank, changed color, and eventually became so different that there was very little resemblance between the Kel'Dorai and the Kel'Dorai. The Highborne of eldre'thalas, however, remained on Kalimdor and within the World Tree's influence. This is the most likely explanation for these Highborne's lack of mutation. Next, we need to discuss eldre'thalas, for a lot of the Highborne's history has taken place there. Eldre'thalas was a magical city ruled by Prince Tortheldrin and served as a circle of arcanists Queen Azshara relied on for safekeeping much of the Light of Light's arcane library. The Queen's most important demands were processed through eldre'thalas by the shen'dralar, and often in secret. During the Sundering, the shen'dralar erected a shield that protected them from most of the damaging energy that was released when the well collapsed. But when they released the shield, they found the well was gone, and their magic greatly diminished. They grew despondent and lethargic until Prince Tortheldrin realized he had a way to save his people by trapping a demon and siphoning its magic for their use. However, over the years of their isolation and the demon's imprisonment, named Imolthar, the magic used to imprison the demon and sustain the lives of the shen'dralar shifted, and the Highborne had to be careful with how much power they drew upon. This was noted by Prince Tortheldrin, and in answer, he began murdering many of the shen'dralar inside the walls of eldre'thalas because of this dangerous magical shift. When the magic began to require more power to keep the demon in the shield than they were able to draw from him, Tortheldrin began killing his own people, sacrificing them and their lives to the pylons to keep Imolthar contained. This is the reason the Highborne began rejoining the world. It is also why there are so very few of them. However, while the shen'dralar have been sustaining themselves on fel energy, unlike the shen'dralar, your eyes aren't green. And there's really no lore-friendly explanation for this. Everyone else touched by fel is marked, and while we might not see signs in warlocks, it's almost a universal truth. Fel corrupts all it touches. Perhaps the pylons had some sort of filtration system. Who knows? Like the shen'dralar and the Kel'Dorai, the Highborne are also addicted to magic, and just like them, you need to find a way to deal with it. The imprisonment and drawing of Imolthar was a way to sustain them, allow them to access magic while satiating the ever-growing withdrawal pangs. These pangs have not disappeared. With the revelation of the Nightborne, also a splinter group descended from the Highborne, maybe some answers have come forth to sustained magical sustenance. Unlike their shen'dralar, Kel'Dorai, and shal'dorei counterparts, the Highborne mages are very disciplined and careful with their use of magic. They are trained to use their magic with great restraint, and this is for a couple of reasons. Primarily, though, it's because they know what happened the last time use of magic went unchecked. They remember well the War of the Ancients and the Sundering, which was a direct result of over-abuse of the arcane and they will openly admit that it was their fault. They are also extremely limited to their access in magic, or were until very recently, with no access to the Well of Eternity, and they could only draw on the power of one single demon. They had to be very, very careful with how much magic they used. The Highborne are an ancient order of master arcanists, of which there are very few remaining. Having re-emerged into society, they seek to regain a good reputation by bringing their prodigious magical skills to bear against the enemies of the Alliance. Well, that is going to be it from me for this week. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember, if you like what you see and you want to see more, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to comment below, and don't forget to subscribe. I also have a Patreon. The link is in the description box below, as well as up in my channel header art. So if you want to help me improve my video quality, make sure you stop on by and donate. Remember, your donations go directly to things to improve the quality of my videos and may lead to more videos per week. Anyways, guys, thank you again so much for watching. Have a great week, have a great weekend, and I will see you again in Azeroth.